You ever notice how some people brag about having hundreds of friends, yet when life hits them hard, they feel completely alone? Let me tell you something. Having a huge social circle doesn't mean you're secure. In fact, it often means the exact opposite. Security comes from depth, not numbers. It comes from knowing that the people in your life are solid, that they have your back no matter what. And that's why a man with no friends, or just a very small circle, is actually in the best position of all. When you let too many people into your life, you invite chaos. You're constantly managing different personalities, egos, expectations. You've got to wonder who's real and who's pretending, who's cheering for you and who's secretly hoping you fail. The truth is, most people don't even know who their real friends are until they're in a tough spot. And by then, it's too late. The damage is done. That's why being selective isn't just a preference, it's a strategy. A man who keeps his circle small doesn't have to worry about snakes in the grass because there's no grass. There's just a clean, open space where only the right people stand. Look at the people at the top, the ones who've truly built something. You don't see them surrounded by crowds of so-called friends. No, they operate with a handful of trusted allies. Why? Because the more people you let in, the more distractions, the more opinions, the more drama. And guess what? Most of them don't actually care about you. They care about what you can do for them. They care about how you make them feel. But the moment you stop serving their needs, they disappear. So what's more important, having 1,000 names in your contact list or having 2 or 3 people who would take a bullet for you? I'll tell you right now, those 2 or 3 are worth more than any crowd. A man who stands alone or with just a few close allies is a man who cannot be easily shaken. He's not constantly worried about what people think. He's not trying to impress an audience that doesn't even matter. He's focused, locked in, making moves without asking for permission or validation. And that is power. That is security. Because security isn't just about physical safety, it's about emotional and mental stability. It's about knowing that you are not at the mercy of flaky, unreliable people. You ever hear someone say, I can't cut them off, we've been friends for years? Listen, loyalty is a great thing, but blind loyalty, that's a trap. If someone isn't adding value to your life, if they're not pushing you forward, if they're draining your energy, then why are they still in your space? Keeping someone around just because of history is like holding on to a business that's been losing money for decades. At some point, you gotta cut your losses. And when you do, you free up space for something better. The fewer people you have in your life, the more control you have over your environment. You're not pulled in 100 different directions. You're not dealing with unnecessary drama. You're not constantly worrying about who's gossiping about you, who's secretly envious, who's waiting for a moment to bring you down. You walk through life with clarity, with certainty, knowing that the few people beside you are solid. And here's the real kicker. When you have fewer friends, the ones you do have, they mean something. They're not just drinking buddies, not just people to pass the time with. They are your foundation. They are the ones who show up when it matters. They are the ones who won't let you fall. And if you've got even one person like that in your life, you are already richer than most. A man who doesn't rely on others for his strength is a man who cannot be broken. Independence isn't just a mindset, it's a necessity. The more people you depend on, the more vulnerable you become. Because people, they're unreliable. They change, they leave, they disappoint. But a man who builds his own foundation, who stands strong without needing constant reassurance, that's the kind of man who is truly secure. Most people think security comes from having a big support system, from always having someone to call, someone to lean on. But the truth is, every time you lean on someone, you're giving them power over you. You're allowing them to be the reason you stand, and that means they can also be the reason you fall. That's why a man with no friends, or a very small circle, is actually in the best position. He's not waiting on anyone to save him. He saves himself. Look around. How many times do you see people hesitate because they're waiting for approval, waiting for backup, waiting for someone to tell them it's okay to take the next step? That hesitation, that's weakness. A man who relies on himself moves with confidence. He doesn't need permission. He doesn't need support. He makes decisions and stands by them. That kind of certainty, that's what makes a man unshakable. People fear being alone because they don't trust themselves enough. They need distractions, constant validation, someone to tell them they're on the right path. But a man who can sit in silence without feeling lost, that's a man who's truly in control. Because when the noise fades, when there's no one left to impress, all that remains is who you are at your core. And if you've built yourself the right way, that's all you'll ever need. Look at history. The strongest men, the ones who built legacies, who changed the world, they weren't surrounded by crowds of so-called friends. They weren't looking for acceptance. They were locked in, focused, moving forward, no matter who stood beside them or who walked away. They understood that true power comes from within, that security isn't found in numbers, but in self-reliance. There's freedom in not needing anyone. There's power in knowing that whether people stay or go, you remain the same. That's what separates the strong from the weak. Because at the end of the day, no one is coming to save you. No one is responsible for your success. That's on you. And the sooner you embrace that, the sooner you'll realize just how powerful you really are. The more people you let into your life, the more openings you create for problems. Every person comes with their own motives, their own baggage, their own level of loyalty or lack of it. And the more connections you have, the harder it is to know who's real and who's just there for the ride. A man who keeps his circle small, or even chooses to walk alone, eliminates unnecessary risks. He's not constantly looking over his shoulder, wondering who's talking behind his back, who's secretly envious, or who might turn on him the second things go south. He moves through life with clarity because he knows exactly who's in his corner. People think having a large network means safety. They assume more friends equal more protection, more support, more security. But that's a dangerous illusion. The more people involved in your life, the more opinions, the more expectations, the more people feel entitled to a piece of you. And when the time comes when you need something real, when you need someone to truly stand by you, most of them won't be there. They'll be too busy, too distracted, too invested in their own interests. That's why a man with a small, selective circle, or no circle at all, is the most secure man in the room. He doesn't waste time on unnecessary connections. He's not distracted by fake friendships. He's built his life in a way where he doesn't need to rely on unpredictable people. Look at the ones who constantly surround themselves with people. They always have a group, always need to be in the mix, always chasing validation from a crowd, and yet when something goes wrong, when life tests them, you see the truth. They're alone. The people they thought were friends disappear. The ones who acted like they cared suddenly have other things to do. But the man who never needed that crowd in the first place, he's unfazed. He's not caught off guard because he never depended on anyone to hold him up. That's real security. That's strength. The fewer people you let into your life, the fewer vulnerabilities you have. No one can betray you if they don't have access to you. No one can manipulate you if you don't give them the opportunity. Most people don't even realize how much energy they waste managing relationships that bring no real value. Dealing with gossip, fake loyalty, backstabbing, it drains you, it distracts you, it keeps you from moving with the kind of focus and certainty that creates real success. But the man who cuts all that noise out, he moves differently. He's sharp, locked in, completely in control of his environment. It's not about being antisocial. It's not about pushing everyone away. It's about understanding that security comes from being selective, from knowing that most people aren't built to handle real loyalty, real commitment, real integrity. And if you're not careful, if you let too many people in, their weaknesses will become your weaknesses. Their chaos will become your chaos. Their instability will shake your foundation. But when you keep your circle tight or choose to walk alone, none of that can touch you. Most people will never understand this. They'll keep chasing connections, thinking they need to be surrounded, thinking that being alone means something is missing. But the ones who truly build something, the ones who rise above, the ones who operate at the highest level, they know the truth. Security doesn't come from numbers. It comes from eliminating liabilities. It comes from choosing wisely. It comes from knowing that at the end of the day, the only person you can fully trust, the only person you can truly count on is yourself. Distractions are the enemy of progress. Most people don't even realize how much time they waste entertaining meaningless conversations, maintaining surface-level relationships, and trying to keep up with people who add zero value to their lives. They think being surrounded by people makes them feel important, makes them feel connected. But what it really does, it drains their focus. It scatters their energy. It keeps them from locking in on the things that actually move the needle. A man with a small circle, or no circle at all, has an advantage that most people will never understand. He has space. Space to think. Space to work. Space to build without interference. And that space? That's where power comes from. Look at the ones who are constantly involved in social drama, the ones who always have something going on, always caught up in someone else's business. They never seem to move forward, do they? It's because they're too distracted. They spend more time managing relationships than managing their own growth. They waste their mental energy trying to impress people instead of improving themselves. And then they wonder why they never reach the next level. It's because their focus is divided. But a man who eliminates distractions, a man who doesn't waste time on meaningless connections, he moves with purpose. Every ounce of his energy goes toward his vision, toward his craft, toward his future. There's a reason the most successful people operate in isolation. It's not because they don't like people. It's because they understand the cost of distractions. They know that every conversation, every unnecessary social event, every pointless interaction takes something from them. Time, energy, focus. And they refuse to give those things away cheaply. They protect their mind like it's their most valuable asset. Because it is. They know that their ability to stay locked in, to stay fully immersed in their work, is what separates them from everyone else. Most people don't have that kind of discipline. They crave stimulation. They need to be around others, need to be entertained, need to feel included. And that's exactly why they never break through. Because every time they should be working, they're talking. Every time they should be thinking, they're scrolling. Every time they should be pushing forward, they're being pulled in 100 different directions by people who have no real impact on their success. A man who operates alone, or with only a few select people, doesn't have that problem. He controls his environment, he controls his input, and because of that, he controls his results. The fewer people in your life, the fewer distractions you have, and the fewer distractions you have, the more productive you become. It's that simple. When your mind isn't cluttered with useless conversations, when your time isn't eaten up by meaningless interactions, you gain something that most people never experience: clarity. And with clarity comes speed. While everyone else is trying to figure out what's next, you're already 10 steps ahead. While they're hesitating, you're executing. While they're distracted, you're building. That's the difference. It's not about cutting people off just for the sake of it. It's about being intentional, about making sure that every person in your life serves a purpose, that every connection adds something rather than takes something away. And if they don't belong in your space. Because time is the most valuable resource you have, and how you use it determines everything. The man who wastes it never gets anywhere. But the man who protects it, he controls his own destiny. Most people live their lives in a constant state of influence, shaped by the thoughts, opinions, and expectations of others. They don't even realize it. They think they're making their own decisions, but in reality, they're adjusting, compromising, holding back, just to fit in, just to be accepted, just to avoid standing out too much. A man who stands alone, or with only a select few, doesn't have that problem. He doesn't absorb the fears and limitations of others. He doesn't get weighed down by their doubts. He operates with a level of clarity and certainty that only comes when you are free from external influence. Every person you let into your life brings their mindset with them. If they think small, if they move with fear, if they make excuses, those things start creeping into your world. Even if you don't realize it at first, it happens. It's subtle, a little doubt here, a little hesitation there, until one day you look up and you're operating at their level instead of yours. That's the danger of having the wrong people around you. And the truth is, most people are the wrong people. They don't push you forward, they hold you back. Not always intentionally, but it happens. Their insecurities, their distractions, their negativity, it all bleeds into you if you let it. A man who stays away from unnecessary relationships protects his mind. He guards his thoughts. He keeps himself sharp because he's not constantly being influenced by weak, fearful people. He doesn't waste time explaining himself, defending his vision, or trying to convince others to see what he sees. He just moves. And that movement, that ability to make decisions without interference, is what makes him powerful. Because when you don't have to fight against the opinions of others, when you don't have to battle constant negativity, you move faster. You think clearer. You trust yourself completely. Most people don't even know who they are outside of other people's expectations. They've spent so long being what others want them to be that they've lost their own voice. They make choices based on what's safe, based on what won't upset the balance, based on what keeps them accepted. But a man who doesn't rely on a crowd, he gets to live with complete authenticity. He does what he wants, not what's expected. He makes decisions that are right for him, not for the approval of others, and that level of freedom, that's rare. The world conditions people to seek validation. From childhood, they're told to follow the rules, to fit in, to get along with everyone. But the ones who break through, the ones who operate at a different level, they reject all of that. They don't need validation. They don't need approval. They trust themselves above all else. And because of that, they build lives on their terms. They create, they lead, they dominate, while everyone else hesitates, second guesses, and waits for permission. That's why the most secure man is the one who isn't surrounded by people. He doesn't need anyone else's permission to think big. He doesn't need a support system to take action. He moves because he decides to move. He builds because he decides to build. And that independence, that self-reliance, is what makes him unstoppable. The more time you spend surrounded by people, the more time you spend answering to their needs, adjusting to their expectations, and accommodating their wishes. That's the reality most people live in. Their actions, their time, and their energy are dictated by the people around them. They think they're making independent choices, but they're not. They're acting in response to others, based on what will make them happy, based on what will keep the peace, based on what will earn them approval. A man who keeps his circle small or who chooses to walk alone doesn't deal with any of that. His time is his own, his energy is his own, and his actions are his own. He's not responding to anyone. He's moving based on his own vision, his own purpose, and that's why he's in control. Most people are stuck in a cycle of reacting. They get a call, they make a decision based on what's convenient for someone else, they receive a text, and suddenly their schedule changes because they're trying to please others. They're constantly giving away pieces of themselves, adjusting their plans, bending their priorities, all because they're trying to fit into someone else's world. It's exhausting, and it's a cycle that keeps them stuck. But the man who moves without the influence of others, he takes control of his time. He decides what to do with his day, with his energy, and with his life. He doesn't give anyone the power to pull him in different directions. The truth is, we're all given the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in a day. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful, the powerful from the powerless, is how they use that time. A man who has a crowded, distracted life is wasting time. Every moment spent adjusting to the needs of others, every moment spent maintaining relationships that don't serve him, is a moment he'll never get back. He's playing a losing game, responding to the world instead of creating his own reality. But a man who is intentional with his time, who protects it fiercely, who keeps his circle small, who only invests in relationships that add value. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste energy. He's laser focused. He's building, creating, and pushing forward. And that's the difference. Time is your most precious asset. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can't get it back. And most people don't realize how much time they waste until it's too late. They wait for others to decide for them. They wait for others to dictate their actions. They wait for someone else to lead the way. But when you stop waiting for permission, when you stop seeking approval, when you stop letting other people dictate your schedule, that's when you truly start to create your life. That's when you start to move in the direction you've always wanted to move. The man who operates alone doesn't have to waste time. He doesn't have to wait for others. He doesn't have to worry about anyone else's expectations. He decides, he moves, and every second he spends is a second building something meaningful. That's why a man with no friends or a very small circle is a very secure man. He's secure in his time, he's secure in his energy, he's secure in his purpose. He doesn't let the world tell him what to do, when to do it, or how to do it. He takes full ownership of his life, and because of that, he creates his own future.